Chapter 14. When Peg dragged through the back door, Ma was in what Mr. Murphy called a real stew. "Where have you been so late?" Ma demanded. Peg's only answer was to hold up her skirts up over her knees. Ma took a look at Peg's legs, pushed her into the nearest kitchen chair, and bent to examine her knees more closely. "Merciful heavens," she said. "Pull off those stockings, missy, and we'll tend to clean the scrapes. How in the world did you do this?" "I fell," Peg said. "Chasing that Marcus herd, no doubt. I have a good mind to speak to that boy's mother, though from what I hear she's plenty of other family problems to contend with." As Ma went on, her steam slowly dying down like the steam of a kettle from a fire, Peg held her tongue, for now her mind was filled with what Miss Hennessy told her and what she had answered. She had believed Miss Hennessy. She had believed, "I'll keep your secret." She had to believe. "I'll keep your secret," Peg had told her, even if the responsibility of the promise had scared her right down to her toes. "Ouch," she murmured as Ma pried a tiny pebble from her torn skin. "Sorry, love," Ma said. "I'm trying to be as gentle as possible, but I have to get all the dirt out." She sighed. "You want me to think of you as a grown-up. Then you'll come home with a perfectly good pair of stockings torn to shreds, and look as disheveled as if you'd been in a fight. That Marcus—" "Don't blame Marcus," Peg said. "It wasn't his fault." "So you're the one who started all this time, are you?" "I don't want to talk about it." "Can't say I blame you." "Ma, I'm sorry. Let's not talk about it any more, please." Silently, Ma sponged and patted and wrapped Peg's skin knees in soft, clean cloths. She had no sooner finished than John arrived home. He hung his coat on the peg near the back door and turned to his wife, sadly shaking his head. "Even though I'm Federal and loyal to the bone, I'm thinking that putting the state of Missouri under military rule might have been a big mistake." "Military had to do something to stop the Southern sympathizers," Ma countered. She washed her hands and began to dish up bowls that looked and smelled like a delicious vegetable stew. "They were threatening the Federals, burning their barns and houses, running them off their land. Well, now the sympathizers have been bold enough to slip into St. Joe again. They've done a terrible thing. They recognized a man who they claimed was posing as a Confederate, but whom they suspected of being a Union spy. They chased him down, dragged him out of town before the authorities could act, and hung him on the branch of an old oak tree near the river." Peg grew so cold she felt faint, and the spoon she'd been holding dropped from her hand. "Who was the man?" she whispered. John shrugged. "I don't know. No one from around here, I was told." Ma sank into her chair, her shoulders drooping. "This terrible war has to end soon," she said, "before we are all destroyed." "Was the murdered man James?" Peg wondered. "And if he was, and it's known, and he's brought information to Miss Hennessy, then what will become of her? Will she be arrested and imprisoned as she said she might be?" Peg, where are you off to, love?" Peg realized that Ma was speaking to her. "I'm sorry, Ma," she managed to say. "Why did you ask me?" "You're not eating," Ma said. "I asked why." "I don't feel like eating." So cold she shivered. Peg pressed her hands against the pain in her stomach. "I feel sick, Ma. I hurt." Noreen pressed a hand against Peg's forehead. "You haven't got fever. That's a good sign," she said. It's in my knees." Peg stammered desperately, searching for an excuse. I want to go to bed." They hurt that much? Well, upstairs if you love, and if you need or want anything, a nice soothing cup of peppermint tea perhaps, just call me." "Thanks, Ma." Peg scooted in her chair and bent to kiss Ma's forehead and head for the stairs. "What's this about her knees?" she heard John ask, but Peg was in her room before Ma's explanation. Snuggled under her warm quilt, ignoring the sting of her skinned knees, Peg tried to sort out her thoughts. Miss Hennessy had said she had information she needed. Although she hadn't admitted that James had brought it to her, he was the one who she'd met in the alley. Peg was sure that the Union spy who'd be hung was James, and she was equally sure that Miss Hennessy would try to leave St. Joe as soon as possible. She wouldn't travel at night. That'd be too dangerous. But come morning, in the light, she'd probably leave, head for Nellie and Louis Parker's house on River Road, without Peg. Peg gave a low moan. Miss Hennessy had promised, "I'll never ask you to travel with me again." But she'd be in danger traveling alone. Peg had no idea what information she was bringing the Union officer. Maybe it was a spoken message, but maybe, since the information was so important, it was written down. Of a young companion, she could seem to be just a mother traveling with a daughter, but if she was alone, she'd be vulnerable to being stopped and searched. Peg groaned, stunned at the stuffing the edge of her quilt into her mouth to stifle the sound. "I can't desert her. I can't let her travel alone. What should I do?" She thought again of Mike, who'd gone into battle, risking his life for the Union. She thought about Frances Mary, who had bravely smuggled runaway slaves to Canada. And she thought about Danny, who was eager to help his country. Peg had told Danny there's other ways to help the Union besides fighting. And here was one of those ways, dropped right in her lap. She could be every bit as brave as her brothers and sisters and ride for Miss Hennessy, helping her get important information to the Union Army. All she had to do was make a plan for it to happen. Tossing and squirming from side to side on sheets that had been pulled up and rumpled, Peg wondered how she could possibly work out a plan. If she explained everything to Ma, she'd have a fit and keep Peg home safely under her care. So she couldn't tell Ma. Although Peg hated keeping secrets from Ma, she still had done it, but under no circumstances would she deliberately deceive Ma. What was she going to do? Exhausted, she finally slipped from bed and quietly opened the bedroom door. The house was dark and quiet except for the rhythmic rumble of John Murphy's snoring. Peg gently closed the door, made her way from the small desk in her room, and lit the oil lamp. From a drawer she pulled a sheet of paper. She fitted a pen point to its holder and opened the bottle of ink. She'd write to Ma. So very much had happened, even to fill the pages, but she'd tell Ma all the important things at least, and she'd tell her where she had gone so early in the morning. Ma would find the letter, and Peg didn't appear downstairs, and by the time Peg was sure that Miss Hennessy would be that she was sure that she and Miss Hennessy would be on their way. Peg bent to the paper, writing quickly, but dipping the pen carefully so the ink wouldn't blot her letter. She had written most of what she wanted to when the door opened suddenly, and there stood Ma clutching her wrapper together over her flannel nightgown. Startled, Peg dropped the pen. "What are you doing?" Ma asked. "I'm writing a letter." "There's something very much the matter, Peg. What is it?" Peg jumped up from her chair, ran to Ma, and wrapped her arms around her. As Ma hugged her in return, Peg's brave resolutions vanished, and she tucked her face into Ma's shoulder, not even trying to stop her tears. Holding her tightly, Ma guided Peg to the bed where they sat side by side, Ma gently murmuring and snuggling and patting until Peg's tears turned into their eyes shudders and sobs. "There now, love," said Ma. "The storm is over. Can we talk about what's upset you so much?" "Oh, Ma," Peg said, "I wish the war was over." "As do we all," Ma answered. "Is it the tales John brings home that frightens you?" Peg nodded. "That and the awful thing that happened to the spy, and all of it." "Do you want to talk about it?" "No, I don't. I can't. Not right now." There she was, keeping things from Ma again, just when she didn't want to. But Peg reminded herself that Ma read the letter in the morning, everything would be explained. It wasn't as though she was lying to Ma. She was just delaying telling her what had happened and what was going to happen. "What were you writing?" Ma asked, startling Peg so much she jumped. "A letter," Peg answered. Ma's arms were firm and strong, and she gave Peg an extra hug. "I understand. Sometimes it's easier to put thoughts down on paper and then or talk them over with a sister than with anyone else. Well, if you're writing to Francis and Megan, give them my love." Peg didn't try to explain. She didn't even have enough strength to fight the guilt that crawled up and down her backbone like one of Marcus's squirmy, slimy bugs. "I'll smooth your bed, tuck you in, turn out the light," Ma said. "It's best you sleep now and finish your letter in the morning before going to school." Peg complied. The dark of the room stealed over her like an extra cozy blanket. Drained of all thoughts and feelings, she immediately dropped into sleep. But she woke early, before it was light, her body recharged and her mind racing. It took just a line or two to finish the letter to Ma, and Peg propped on her pillow. She dressed, wincing as she pulled her heavy cotton stockings over the raw spots on her knees. She pulled on her coat, tucked her shawl over head and shoulders, and quietly climbed down the stairs, leaving the house to the front door. As Peg hurried as fast as she could, picking her way over holes and puddles, and nervously jumping at sudden cricks and snicks in the darkness, until she reached Mrs. Kling's boarding house. The sky was lightening on the pearl-edged gray, so Peg recognized the boarder who came out Mrs. Kling's front door as she approached it. "Good morning," he said, stopping in front of her. "You're Miss Hensley's young friend, aren't you?" "Yes," Peg said. "I came to see her." "Well, you won't find her here," he volunteered. "She left for the stables a few minutes ago." The stables? Peg felt sick with dread. All her planning, had he missed her, as she missed her? The boarder smiled again. "Off to visit her sister," she said, "but if you hurry, I'm sure you can catch her." Heedless of the uneven cobblestones, the rubbish that littered the streets, and the pain in her knees, Peg ran as fast as she could in the direction of the stables. She had to catch up with Miss Hennessy. She had to. As Peg rounded the corner, a horse and buggy clip-clopped toward her, and she saw Miss Hennessy was holding the reins. Arms waving like windmills, she brought the buggy to a stop and scrambled inside. Miss Hennessy's eyes were wide with surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I'm going with you," Peg said, and settled herself, pulling her shawl more tightly around her. "You can't." Peg shook her head. "The man who was hanged, it was James, wasn't it?" Miss Hennessy nodded, and for the first time in the thin early light, Peg saw her eyes were red and swollen. "You told me you had important information to give the Union officer you worked with," Peg said. "I'm here to help. We both know you're less likely to be stopped and questioned if I'm with you." "I'm not returning to St. Joe," Miss Hennessy said quietly. "You'd have no way to get back." "I wrote to Ma. I told her only as much as she needed to know, and I told her I'd be making the trip with you. She'll come after me." As Miss Hennessy hesitated, Peg said, "You can't just stay here. You'll have to leave quickly. Let's go." Miss Hennessy gave a flip of the reins, and the horse started up. The day was cold and gray, and no hope of sunshine. The early winter light seemed to pick and probe at the broken bricks, holes in the streets, and boarded-up windows, and shops where owners had fled. Peg shivered. "Do the bushwhackers who'd killed James know that he'd given information to you?" "If they knew," Miss Hennessy said slowly, "I think they would have come to Mrs. Kling's to get me." "Yes," Peg said with a sigh of relief, "I think so too." But Miss Hennessy turned to face Peg, the fear that tightened the muscles around her mouth and widened her eyes leaped like a spark into Peg's heart, squeezing it with a cold hand. "On the other hand, they may have been chased off by the Union patrols in and around St. Joe," she whispered. "Do they know about me?" "I really can't be sure."